Hello to you, friends. This is Dhamma on air, but first, the daily, early Buddhist contemplation. All beings are born and created by their karma. They are formed, shaped, conditioned, elevated, and restricted by their karma. These past actions, this past behavior, is the womb of probability from which they re-emerge. All beings are owners of their karma, debtors to their karma, and they inherit their karma. Whatever they do, whether good or bad, the later effects of that will be theirs only. This accumulation of probability follows them like a shadow of the past that never leaves. Therefore does this karma come to divide all beings into high and low, beautiful or ugly. To improve this karmic accumulation, it is therefore crucial to go for refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha. And to improve behavior, accept and undertake the 5 basic Buddhist training rules. Doing so by repeating these following stanzas defines any Buddhist and is the very entry point into the Sangha, the community of Buddhist disciples. The verbal device for taking the 3 refuges and accepting the 5 precepts goes like this. As long as this life lasts, I hereby take refuge in the Buddha. I hereby take refuge in the Dhamma. I hereby take refuge in the Sangha. I hereby seek shelter in the Buddha for the 2nd time. I hereby seek shelter in the Dhamma for the 2nd time. I hereby seek shelter in the Sangha for the 2nd time. I hereby request protection from the Buddha for the 3rd time. I hereby request protection from the Dhamma for the 3rd time. I hereby request protection from the Sangha for the 3rd time. The 3 refuges is hereby taken. I hereby accept and undertake the training rule of avoiding all killing. I hereby accept and undertake the training rule of avoiding all stealing. I hereby accept and undertake the training rule of avoiding all sexual abuse. I hereby accept and undertake the training rule of avoiding all dishonesty. I hereby accept and undertake the training rule of avoiding all alcohol and drugs, as long as this life lasts. From now on, I can hereby rightly consider myself to be a true Buddhist, with the blessed Buddha as my teacher. This Sangha entry can be verified at the Saddhamma Sangha or Sangha entry page at the website whatbuddhasaid.net. Thank you for your understanding and participation.
Hello to you, friends. This is Dhamma on air number 50. Not too bad, 50 done. Recorded on the 23rd December, the year 2016, on planet Earth, on the Knuckles Mountain, at the foot of the cypress tree in central hill country of Sri Lanka. There are 2 similes, 3 questions, and 4 Kamma-Stories. But first, as usual, the normal intro. Namo Tasso Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Worthy, honorable, and perfectly self-enlightened was the blessed Buddha indeed. The first two similes is the simile of the greedy cow and the split lute. They are from the Samyutta Nikaya, and it's called Vina Sutta. It's from book 35 on the senses, and it's Sutta or thread or speech number 246. From Samyutta Nikaya, the connected discourses of the Buddha, which you see here. Can recommend to read. So the first one is about the greedy cow. It's a cow, it's greedy, it likes to go into the barley field, to the cornfield, and eat its vomit full. Then there's a sleeping watchman, he doesn't see it. And so it keeps ruining this field. And this, however, then he wakes up, and he sees the cow is inside the barley field. And then he goes in there, and then he grabs the cow by the hair between his horns, and then gives a big whack in the back part so he can take it out the barley field. And this he does several times. He has to do it several times before the cow remembers, it cannot go into the barley field, and eats it belly full. So by remembering the whack in the bottom, it keeps out of the barley field. And the simile the Buddha said is, it goes like this to keep a guard on the senses, not to follow after the senses. The barley field is all objects that can be sensed, that is, visible forms that are cognizable by the eye, hearable sounds that are cognizable by the ear, smellable smells that are cognizable by the nose, tasteable tastes which are cognizable by the tongue, tactile touches which are cognizable by the skin and the body, and mental states and ideas that are cognizable by the mind. This one shouldn't follow after. However, when this greedy cow, which is a symbol of consciousness, because consciousness wants to sense pleasure, and therefore it runs into this field of sense pleasure, because it gains peace there, a moment of peace and a moment of happiness also, together called satisfaction. But it also becomes addicted to it. This addiction, craving and clinging, this then causes suffering, because the object in there, in this barley field, is always impermanent, unstable, and one cannot be sure it will come back. The sleeping watchman is a simile for the lacking mindfulness, lack of awareness, sati, and lack of clear comprehension, sampayana. Lack of sati is like the consciousness going into the sense pleasure park. Without noticing it, it's going in there. It's like the cow not noticing, not knowing, not being aware of it, that now is going inside the barley field, causing itself long-term suffering. lack of clear comprehension is not knowing, not seeing that this sense pleasure park of sights and sounds and so on, this also is suffering because of its impermanence. So there's no clear comprehension of what the body field of sense pleasure is before going into it, before diving into it. Because this is not present in this mind, in this greedy cow consciousness. Right before stepping in with the first foot, then it goes in there again and again. Until beaten out by the hair, taken by the hair and get a whack in the bottom. When this is repeated out by this mindfulness and clear comprehension, seeing the suffering, seeing the addiction, seeing the impermanence, seeing the folly of this repeated, compulsive, obsessive behavior, sensumania, then it can stay out of the field. So this is a simile denoting the suffering inherent in following after sense pleasures. Here symbolized by a cow as consciousness and a barley field as a field of sense pleasures. The other story is about the internal things that one also is craving for and clutching to. And this is a story about the lute. It's a king, he hears from a distance a lute player, he plays his lute. A lute is a kind of a guitar, you see it here. And then he's enchanted, entranced, and hypnotized by this very delightful sound, this very skillful player. So he asks his servants, what is this? This is a lute. They say, please bring me this lute. Then they bring him the lute. But then he looks at it and say, so what is this? This is the lute you ask for, sir. But I don't want the lute, I want the sound, he says. And then he smashes up the lute and burns it and throws the ashes away. So this lute is like the internal sense, namely form, the body, feeling, perception, mental construction and consciousness. The khandhas, the 5 khandhas. The 5 clusters of clinging that we cling to. It's not something where mind is going outside. It's something, it clings to something that is inherent, embodied within itself. So it clings to that also. That also causes suffering. Because basically it's impermanent. The body becomes sick and from dust to dust, as you know. And the same thing with feeling, perception, and mental construction. They are momentary. And so also is any kind of consciousness. So it's like the string of the lute. There's a pling, yes, there's a pling, but it's only a pling. The pling is gone already when you hear it. Then it's ending right there on the spot. So the lute player, the music of the lute, it is dependent upon other things. There should be a lute player, a skilled lute player. There should be a plectrum. There should be a string of the string, and there should be the grip of the board, and so on. There should be many kinds of things. So then this playing of the lute comes into being. But in itself, it has no... The pleasure of the lute playing is not found in the body of the lute, of the guitar, or of the string, or even of the lute player, which symbolizes consciousness, playing the senses. It is like saying that there is this happiness in the lute. The pleasure of hearing lute music is in the lute itself. It's like saying there's pleasure in this body in itself. Having a body in itself is a guarantee of pleasure. But since the king finds out that the music of the lute is not inside the lute itself, and therefore he destroys it and throws it away. And so also should a monk and anyone engaging in the noble way. They should see this form, feeling, perception, mental construction, planning, hopes, intentions, and consciousness itself. They should see this as suffering. They should not plunge into it, engage in it, involve with it, or cling to it. It's only when seeing both the external sense objects and sense pleasures and the internal clusters of clinging as suffering, then one stops clinging them, one stops wanting them. One searches for something else. That something else is Nibbana. So far for the simile of the greedy cow and the split lute. The first question is question number 166. What is Buddha's take on sexual misconduct? Question A. Are different forms of sexuality existing today sexual misconduct and the result of one's own past karma? Question B. How about people who are born as eunuchs? Yes, first, what is sexual misconduct or sexual abuse or sexual misbehavior? This goes under the third precept, actually, the third training rules. One accepts the training rule of avoiding all sexual abuse. And this is basically saying that one should not cause pain or suffering to others in one's own search for pleasure, neither directly nor indirectly, neither now or here or something that affects that comes much later. Because when one searches for pleasure, and if one induce pain or suffering in others, now or later, directly or indirectly, then this pain will return to oneself by this probabilistic mirror that reality is. One will lose degrees of freedom, be degraded by this, causing other beings suffering. And this is because the self, this information processing machine that is going around and doing things as wording, it cannot be regarded as an independent entity. It is dependent upon and linked to, probabilistically and karmically, to the other beings, the other processing, information processing entities that are going around in this so-called reality. So basically, avoiding sexual abuse is an essential core of harmlessness. And this one has to get right. It's the first thing one has to get right, is that harming others is harming oneself. One cannot harm others directly or indirectly, now or later, to the slightest degree. Not an atom, not a millisecond, not one quantum of energy. One cannot harm others without harming oneself later. The effect is delayed, yes, but this is not saying that the causality is not working. It is working. Whether one harms them sexually, or one robs them, or whatever, in whatever forms one harms others, cause suffering or pain or frustration to other beings, then one will cause the same to oneself. And that is, of course, needless to say, not happiness, not right. So, again, avoiding sexual abuse essentially is a factor of harmlessness, which has to be there before happiness can be achieved. Because otherwise one is running around in echoes of one's own harming others in the past that are coming, waving in from behind and then causing suffering and frustration in events falling out now in the present moment. And since we have done that before, long before, in lives we cannot remember, then we are experiencing various forms of suffering now. Because we also did something right. In the past, we've been so lucky as we've been born as humans. We have the ability to even go higher than human. And we can experience several moments of pleasure and joy and contentment and satisfaction in this human life. And then also because we have done a lot of neutral things, we also have a lot of neutral moments. So we are basically going around in an echo valley of our own actions, our own past behavior. More specifically, sexual misconduct or sexual abuse is as follows. One should not mate sexually with another's partner, because then the other partner will feel sorrow. One should not make sexually with minors those that are less than 16 or to 18 years of age. One should not have sex that bears risk of an infectious disease, because then other people get sick and therefore suffer. One should not make sexually with anyone engaged or married to another, then the other one's partner. Engaged or married or whatever involvement there has been, they suffer from jealousy and feeling betrayed, which can be this pain can be very deep. One should not mate sexually with those imprisoned, forced or under the law, because then it can be kind of like a way of them getting out. So they are not engaging in this sex from a free will. They are engaged in this sex because they want to get out of prison. One should not have sex with one's own children or those protected by others. One should not have sex with one's father, mother, brother, sister, uncle or aunt. One should not have sex with those entrusted to one's parent-like responsibility, like adoption, when working in schools, kindergartens, orphanages, churches, temples, monasteries, youth organizations, as scouts or sport clubs or mental institutions. Those that are regarding inside there or in connection with this, one should not have sex with. One should not have sex with animals, with excrement or with corpses. The Buddha said about this sexual abuse, illicit sexual behavior, when indulged in, developed and pursued repeatedly, is something that leads to hell, leads to rebirth as a primitive animal, leads to the realm of the hungry ghost. The slightest of all the results coming from illicit sexual behavior is future rivalry and revenge when one becomes a human being. I'll give the link below. It's from Untitled Nikaya, number 8, the Book of Age, Sutta number 40. From the Manual of the Five Destinations, a non-canonical text goes like this. Adultery committed repeatedly by an otherwise good person who does not kill, steal, lie, or intoxicate much, and who also does significantly good deeds, like giving and helping, will, in the mildest case context, result in homosexual tendency or orientation in the next human rebirth. So it's a person who is good, doesn't kill, doesn't steal, doesn't lie, doesn't bribe or oppress others, but cannot resist having sex with somebody else's partner. They will lose this degree of freedom of heterosexuality and having a family and giving birth to children in the next life by becoming homosexual. Furthermore, abandoning illicit sex, the disciple of the noble ones abstains from illicit sex. In doing so, he gives freedom from danger, freedom from animosity, freedom from oppression to limitless number of beings. In giving freedom from danger, freedom from animosity, and freedom from oppression to limitless number of beings, he or she thus gains a fair share of limitless freedom from danger, freedom from animosity, and freedom from oppression. This is the third gift, the third great benefit, and the sixth reward of merit. Also from the Anguttara Nikaya, the numerical discourses of the Buddha, Book 8, Sutta number 39. So again, you see the Buddha here emphasizes the aspect of harmlessness. Not avoiding all sexual abuse is like giving a present to the world, to a limitless number of beings, and say, I don't sexually abuse your partner or your child or your uncle or your mother or your father or your brother or sister who has ended up in prison or in a mental institution or in a childcare home or adoption home or whatever, or sport club, or I don't sexually abuse anyone in this scout organization or youth organization or whatever. I don't sexually abuse anyone. This is a gift one gives to the world, to limitless number of beings, infinite number of beings, taking this stand on not sexually abusing anybody whatsoever. Which is not actually easy, because one might get fall in love or be sexually aroused by someone who has a partner. and who's also sexually aroused with one's own appearance, and therefore will suggest sex here or there in the secret corners of the world, and then one falls right there, usually under the influence of alcohol. Can be parties at after dinner parties at the job or at the conference or at any place where one is out of home and away from one's own partner. And there are other partners that are also away from their own partner. Can happen anywhere, actually. One should see it as a kind of harmlessness, that one abstains from any kind of taking pleasure, in this case sexual pleasure, that harms others, that causes pain or suffering to others, because that will be mirrored back to oneself, delayed. If we should sum up, is heterosexuality with a consenting mature partner not engaged to other side sexual misconduct? No, it is not. Is homosexuality with a consenting mature partner not engaged to other side sexual misconduct? No, it is not. Homosexuality, the Buddha didn't mention homosexuality or same-sex partners as one of the 110 wrong partners that I just mentioned. So homosexuality is not in itself sexual abuse. It's not sexual misconduct. Both oral or anal intercourse is also seen among heterosexual couples. So it's not the sexual practice in itself. However, homosexuality itself may be a result of past life sexual misconduct as a heterosexual. So one loses the ability to be heterosexual, and the degrees of freedom and joys hereunder pregnancy and having children and family and so on in the next life. So it's a loss of degree of freedom. This one typically sees as a karmic result. Is whatever sexuality with a consenting mature partner engaged to other side sexual misconduct? Yes. So whether it's a homosexual couple or a heterosexual couple, can be married or unmarried, just they are together. If one has sex with one of these partners that are engaged to other side, that has given some kind of promise, if one has sex with them, whether homo or heterosexual, then what it is illicit sex, is sexual abuse. Why so? Because the partner will feel sorrow. The partner will feel sorrow. Usually so also, if there is a kind of like a marriage or kind of like a partnership with a homo or heterosexual, then the person who has gone out also feel bad about it later on. They feel they have betrayed their own partner by taking a new partner in the secret, either repeatedly or once or a few times. So they feel also lousy about it. So there is suffering on both accounts, you can say. Is whatever sexuality knowingly putting others at risk for a sexual transmitted disease sexual misconduct? Yes. If one knows one has a sexual disease and one has unprotected sexual intercourse with another being that can transmit a disease also, then one is knowingly putting others at risk of disease, of suffering. So that is definitely sexual misconduct. Is whatever sexuality with an immature partner sexual misconduct? Yes, because they're immature. They don't know what they're doing, basically. In this regard, is whatever sexuality with a child, a mentally ill, or an institutionalized person sexual misconduct? Yes. Is whatever sexuality with an imprisoned inmate partner sexual misconduct? Yes. Is whatever sex with one's father, mother, brother, sister, uncle, or aunt sexual misconduct? Yes. Is sex with an animal, debts, horses, or excrement sexual misconduct? Yes. Is sex involving bondage or pain, such as sadomasochism, sexual misconduct? Can be, not always. If there's a consenting partner and both agrees to it, and nobody of them feels suffering after the event, even though there is physical pain involved momentarily, then it's not sexual misconduct. If there's no consent from one of the partners, then it is sexual abuse. So Buddha definitely said that sexual children and those in institution and protected by others, here under protection by the Sangha, is whatever sexuality with a monastic monk or non-sexual misconduct is. They live in celibacy and they ruin themselves by going out. It's a parajika offense. This means parajika means you have defeated yourself. This means you have to disrobe after that. And if one has sex, whether with another monk or nun, or with somebody outside, a layperson, then one is not a monk or nun from that moment on. And that is a very serious offense. It's the most serious offense you can do is having sex while being a monk or nun in the Buddhist Sangha. So it implies, having on this robe implies one is celibate. And people give one things because one is celibate. So the Buddha said that after having sex, if one doesn't disrobe, then every time one takes on a robe, again after in this life, while one is not a monk, juridically speaking, one is defeated, one is parajika, one is out, game over. And one cannot become a monk or nun again after this sexual misconduct of having sex while being a monk or nun. Then it's counted as stealing the robe. When you eat, every spoonful of food is counting as stealing the food from the Sangha. Every time you go in and sleep inside a monastery, it counts as stealing a room or monastery from the Sangha. And this almost unambiguously leads to hell. So this is very, very serious, both for those who have sex, if it's a layperson from outside, and also the ordained person themselves. They should disrobe immediately, because they are in great danger, if anybody is. So is that. Why is another issue maybe worth explaining is how do we know that animal with sex, because it's not mentioned as the 10 wrong partners, actually is wrong sexual intercourse. As we know from a story that is in the Tipitaka text, was a queen, was a very good Buddhist actually. She did a lot of good things for the Sangha and the Buddha, very well known to the Buddhas personally, and the king was also. And then one day she had the 3 large male dogs, like these race dogs, Mønner, it's called. I'll show a picture of them here. And one day she was standing out doing her toilet in her personal room. One of these male dogs grabbed her from behind and starting having sex with her, mating with her. And she didn't brush it off. She just let it do what it did. And the king, he was standing in another room outside the courtyard and looking into her room and saw this happening. And of course felt great sorrow because he thought she was in love with him and not with this dog. So he asked her about it and she denied and came with some funny lie that it was kind of like a magical window that you saw. If you saw through the window, then very funny things will happen that was not real. But nevertheless, he was very much in love with her figures and very impassioned with her. So it so happened that she died before him. And then he went to the Buddha and asked where she had gone. And then the Buddha saw that she had went to hell. But she will only spend 1 week there. And then he talked about something else, very skillfully. He didn't want to hurt this king, who was so missing his former queen so much because he was so deeply in love with her. So he talked about something else. So the king, he forgot about his queen and the destiny of his queen. And then he went back to his castle. Then some days after, he remembered again while weeping there and his sorrow over his loss. So he went back to the Buddha. And the Buddha, he repeated the trick one more time because the week was not gone yet. She was still in hell. So he talked about something else, up and down the doorway, until the king, he went back to his castle again, forgetting everything about his former wife. Then a third time, he came back to the Buddha. And then it was 10 days has passed. And she's been reborn in the Tavahimsa heaven among the 33 devas. And then the Buddha could explain this. And then he was, of course, very happy. So she had sex with an animal, then she, on that account, went to hell, but for a very short time, a week. Then afterwards, the effects of giving to the Sangha, she's given a lot of food to the Buddha, invited him several times into her private homes. On her own personal initiative, she was born in the Tapahimsa heaven, in divine rebirth. So this you very often see mixed karma, that any human being have done both mistakes and good things. And our job now is to avoid the mistakes and do some good things, to neutralize the mistakes. If she haven't given to the Sangha, if she haven't donated to the Sangha, or been a good Buddhist for a long time, then she might have stayed there 10 years, or 1,000 years, or 10,000 years, if she's done some other contextual bad. So it's a summation of all the probabilities done in one's life, and one forms karma thousands of times per second, every time one forms an intention to look this way, look that way, agree in this, what is said, or disagree in it, or whatever one intends in a split second, that forms karma. Whether it's karma coming out the mind, or whether it's coming out the verbal speech, or whether it's coming out the body, then any intention formed, cetana, is a contribution to the accumulation of karma, which will determine one's future from now on and for a long time forward, until Nibbana, or until it is exhausted. I hope this clears the understanding of what sexual misbehavior is. Otherwise, I put out on my website a Dhamma drop course, What is Sensual and Sexual Misbehavior? Sexual misbehavior, just search for that. Sexual abuse, just search for that. On whatbuddhasaid.net, then there is a detailed explanation. Then the second question, what is the coming cause of being born as an eunuch? And an eunuch is a person who has been castrated very early, before maturity. A male, which is castrated as a young boy for various reasons. The classic one is that one is inside a court, a royal court, and one should be a trusted guard of the harem of this court, belonging to a king or emperor, like that. So not to have sex with this woman, one is castrated. The other one, seen also in our age, but I don't think there's any more life of them, is castral singers. Because their voice doesn't become dark, they can sing in very, very high tones, treble tones, then it was commonly used before. But there can also be other kinds of waiters or servants, very close to an emperor or king, who are castrated very early as a boy. I don't know of any text that actually say what's the karmic cause of that. But a shot from the hip should be that one has been engaged oneself in an earlier life in castrating others. That can be, for example, one has been a punisher in a prison where one castrates others because of sexual misbehavior. Or it can be, for example, it's commonly that male pigs are castrated just after birth. If they are going to be butchered, then they're not so wild. So a few days after birth, the peasant that have these pigs in his pigsty, he castrates the male pigs. But there are also other forms of ritual castration, both of males and of females, cutting into the sexual organs for various reasons in Africa and various other places, many other places in the world, as a kind of maturity. Cutting off of the preputium, of the foreskin of the penis, can also count as that. Doing this against the person's will. The small boy's will. This can, I would say, this is some likely explanation of being born as a eunuch, a male castrated in young age. But the text doesn't say anything about it. It's just my personal opinion. Question 167. What is the structure of the earth from the outer layer to the core? Question B, are there beings who live inside these layers? Yes, first of all, the Buddha say actually that there are, that the hells are down there. It doesn't say at what depth they are. But as you see of the layers here, there's a crust, it's a very thin layer. And then there's an outer mantle zone, it's kind of like semi-fluid, like lava, or harder. Then there's a fluid layer, the inner mantle. And then there's the core, which is a solid core on a very high pressure, where the highest temperature is. This is the classic explanation of what it is. We know that the inner core is rotating, which is solid, because then it creates a magnetic field. The moon that doesn't have a rotating core inside, that rotates compared to the surface of the Earth, it doesn't have any magnetic field. But from where does we actually know this? Actually, much of it is supposition, because there's 6,371 kilometers down to the center of the Earth. And the largest drilling hole is 12 kilometers. And this means that what we know from drill testing and taking specimens out, corresponds to a piece of paper folded around an orange or something like that. So this thin layer is what we know anything definite about. The rest of it, we have no measurement. Definite measurement of. No testing, no experimental evidence. It is just supposition. One time I went into the Geological Museum in Copenhagen. It's just outside the Botanical Garden. There lies a meteor. It's kind of like 2 meters large. It fell down on Greenland, like a starshot, down into the ice. And therefore it didn't explode. And it was found and picked up and transported to Copenhagen and cut. Kind of like a black rough stone, look like a lava stone. Inside it's very dense, but there is bubbles inside it, small cavities inside, full of them, all away. So it's not a complete dense phase. And this is made of the same thing, iron and sulfur and so on. That is also the chemical composition of the Earth. So there are cavities in there because of the gas, like also natural gases in the outer crust. So what we cannot say is, are there cavities inside the outer mantle zone or even the inner mantle zone? We don't know. But there could be. We cannot say anything because we don't have. We know only this outer layer corresponding to the rest of the orange. We don't have any experimental evidence of this. And then there's no methods currently available to scan the Earth in the depth to see what is down there below a few kilometers. So as long as we don't have that, then we don't have any accurate measurements on what's inside there, and whether there are cavities inside there, and whether there are conscious beings, as the Buddha say, living inside the hills down there in considerable numbers. The Buddha emphasized in the Devadatta Sutta that he has seen the hells from himself. He ends the Devadatta Sutta with saying that this is not something he has got from others, that others have told him. He has seen it with himself, directly experienced it, that there are 8 hells, with each 16 minor hells around them. This means that there are 136 hells in all, in total. But 8 clusters of hells, you can say, distributed probably on the Earth's surface. But at what depth, we don't know. There was also a question about whether one could go and visit there through channels at the Earth pole. I don't know whether there are any channels at the Earth poles. There could be. But I don't know. However, one can say, wherever you go, you cannot escape suffering if you go to another realm. That's same also if you would like to go to Mars or to another planet, or somebody thinks that human civilization can save itself by going to another planet. But that is folly speech, because the problem of suffering has nothing to do with the planet. It has to do with craving. It's a mental thing. Suffering is a mental thing. The cause of suffering is also a mental thing. Has nothing to do with the planet where you are. So going somewhere else, you cannot run away or rocket yourself away from suffering. Question 168. The Egyptian pyramids, who built them? where are they and what message did they leave us? Yes, the Egyptian pyramids are basically tomb structures, cemetery abodes of the pharaohs. So there are approximately 130 of them, and they were constructed in the period 2,670 years before Christ to 600 years before Christ. That's just up to before the Buddha's era, which he was born 583. So in this 2,000 years long period, there was a lot of these huge, gigantic stone structures. The first architect was called Imhotep, and they were built as a kind of resurrection machines. So the belief of the Egyptians was that this could magically launch the pharaoh's soul into a divine existence, because these gateways that point out of as I see in the picture here, they point to a place in the sky where there is no stars. And this, the Egyptians thought, was the abode of the divine beings. Then they also mummified the body, the corpse, in a special way, and gave it the presents with down there various grave goods such as jewelry, foods, and games. And they also in the early period of this building, they killed some of the servants because of this nobility or this pharaoh. He should be serviced after death also. So this they stopped doing, but so a considerable number of people died also during construction of these immense stone structures. They were made by stone, local stone, that were cut out and then put it on giant sleds, which you poured water down on, and it was sledged up very slowly by thousands of slaves that pulled these stone blocks up a long ramp, and then they were put into place locally where they were. The message, so what is the message of them? I think this is a massive monument of the force of folly superstition, because this blind belief in deathlessness or immortality after death or divine existence after death can be achieved by some kind of building structure or some kind of mummification or burial ritual or casting magic spells or burial with specific grave goods such as jewelry or food or games or copies of animals or something like that. And this is not the case. Actually, it's the opposite case. That if you kill somebody in order to have your gravestone or burial monument constructed, then you're doing something very evil. And this they did. There was sacrifice of the servants in the early period of the tombs. So the Egyptian pyramids are actually probably the greatest monument over superstition you can find on planet Earth. There's nothing mystical about them. And it's plain how they got built, and that people were killed in the process in significant numbers to build these major stone structures. I hope this answers the questions. They thought actually that when you've been born a pharaoh, then you were preserved in this way, then you will get an afterlife where you also will become a god. And their servants and slaves also believed that. This was a whole kind of self-sustaining blind belief that whatever a pharaoh does, whether good or evil, then he will have a divine existence because you put him in this, you mummify him and then you immortalize him by an ibis will come and pick him up, and then he will go out this channel up to the pyramid into divine existence, and thereby have power over his slave's life from there. This is folly superstition. He'll go the other way. So the last point, 46 minutes in, is 3 Kamma-Stories. They are the good kind. I'll take some various now, but now we have several stories about bad karma. So I think also we should have some of the lighter kind. Paduma Thera. Paduma is a kind of lotus. He, in one of his past lives, gave a lotus flower to Padumulattura, Lord Buddha, and the Buddhist Sangha. And the merit he gained from this, then he became a universal monarch. And he became king over earth a couple of 100 times. And in the last life, he attained Nibbana also from that. Same thing with Tiupala Maliyateya. He offered 3 lily flowers to the Buddha, the former Buddha called Vipassi. And the myriad reason from this flower offering, it caused him not to be reborn in hell for 91 universal cycles. So this was he was not reborn in hell for 91 times 150 billion years. Good result, one has to say. So he was protected. So because of one single action, 3 lily flowers, and given to a Sammasambuddha, in this case Vipassi, then he didn't go there. Then he became king of the Tapahimsa heaven 300 times, and also universal monarch several 100 times, and attained Nibbana also as a cause of that merit. That's probability, that punya. Tikanikara Pupiya Thera, he offered 3 anvil flowers to the Supreme Lord Buddha Sumedha with a devoted pure mind. And he became also a universal monarch. It's kind of like an emperor over the entire India 300 times, and became Tapahimsa heaven for approximately 500 times. And in the human life, wherever he was born as a human after that, he received great wealth. He was born in the high caste every time. He received any kind of vehicle as wished. He received beautiful wives and servants. He received many valuable clothes. He received the respect of others. He got great prestige. He received a lot of flowers and followers, and nobody was able to divide these followers. And he received a noble place among the relatives in his own family, and he didn't have any diseases or sufferings during the rainy seasons, and he didn't suffer from any physical or mental illness. And in the last, he also attained Nibbana. This is the case because the effect of giving to a Buddha is so extremely large. So what is the effect of giving? Is it only dependent upon the gift or the giver? No, it's also dependent upon the recipient, because this is the karmic mirror, and this can be a great amplifier of the effect. So if you give a lump of food to a dog, you will roughly, not literally speaking, but roughly receive the lump of food 1,000 times back before the karmic effect is exhausted later down the road, here in the future. If you give it to a thief, then it's 1,000 times 1,000. If you give it to another giver, non-noble giver, then it's 1,000,000 times 1,000,000. If you give it to a noble, a Sohan, a Sutapati, a stream entrant, then it's 1,000,000 times 1,000,000. And so up to Sakatagami, Anagami, and an Arahant, then it's asankhya. It's incalculable. If you give it to a Supreme Lord Buddha, a Sammasambuddha, then it's incalculable, multiplied with incalculable 7 times. And therefore this effect will last many universal cycles. In this case, we report more than 91 universal cycles. Was one protected from rebirth in hell, even though doing things that would otherwise have brought him to hell. Because you have given these flowers, he didn't go there. So all actions are context dependent. This one should know that if 2 people do the same thing, they will not experience the same result. Why not? Because they have done something else in the past. This means that the context, the karma, the probability is born into, is summed up with. The karmic account this karma is poured into, it can be widely different from the 2 persons. And therefore the end result will be widely different from the 2 persons, even though the action is exactly the same. But usually it goes in the same direction, at least. 51 minutes and 59 seconds. Lastly, I would say a completely non-sectarian and a general well-wishing. Now, this is published tomorrow on Christmas Day. Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to all beings. And this I also like to say to all the Christians out there, or those who come from a Christian culture like myself, that Buddhists have no problem with Jesus, no problem whatsoever. He was a very fine human being, and I don't remember or recall anything that he has said that is wrong. But he wasn't enlightened. He wasn't enlightened. And as he was crucified, then one will tend to speculate that there has been some bad karma in his past also. Maybe he has crucified others or tortured others as a prison guard or soldier or whatever in his past also. So he's not completely free from or karmically innocent, but nobody is, not even Samas and Buddhists. All beings do wrong here and there. That is the noble way, is to ensure that this doesn't happen in the future, which is not easy, but possible. Harmlessness is first. Hereunder also avoiding all sexual abuse. Thank you for your attention. Remember to click subscribe down there. If you want to support the Buddhist Sangha, the Buddhist Forest Sangha, especially with food, which is needed every fortnight, then hover over this small eye up in this corner, then 5 links will come down for you to click. Very nice day up here today. Namo. Tasso. Bhagavato. Arahato. Samma Sambuddhassa. Worthy, honorable, and perfectly self-enlightened was the blessed Buddha. Thank you. Merry Christmas. Have a nice and happy New Year by knowing the causes for happiness and training in them. And have a nice and noble day.
You heard Bhikkhu Samahita from the Cypress Hermitage on the Knuckles Mountain, Bambarella, Central Hill Country, Sri Lanka. Please subscribe to the Google group Buddha Direct and visit the website whatbuddhasaid.net. May all beings become thus happy thereby. Thank you. Namo Tasso Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Worthy, honorable, and perfectly self-enlightened was the blessed Buddha. As the next Buddha, the noble Arya Ajita Maitreya will say, you can come as you like, but you pay as you go. Thank you for your contribution and have a nice day.